After America is made on the lands of the Bunurong and Wurundjeri Woiwurrung peoples of the Kulin Nations. We pay our respects to elders past and present and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded.
We are in a battle for the soul of America.
This is a fraud on the American public.
Hi, I'm Angus Blackman, and this is After America. With me in the virtual studio today is Australia Institute Director of International and Security Affairs, Dr. Emma Shortis. Dr. Emma, hello.
Hi, Angus.
How are you? It's been a while since I've, jumped behind the mic.
It has been a while, and it's also extra weird because you are in Canberra and I'm in Melbourne, which is not how it usually is. But, we'll cope.
I'm usually in Danistan myself, but, here we are, back to the bubble. How good.
It's Benistan now,
Benistan,
just to remind you.
Yeah. Shout out to all those Herald Sun sub-editors out there. G'day, fellas. One of the benefits of being in Canberra is that I've picked up this tidy little copy for everyone listening. So it's a book. New Game, New Rules, A Foreign Policy for Dystopian Times by our colleague and friend of the show, Alan Beam. It's available now for $19.95 from Australia Institute Press. I haven't read it yet. I'm really excited. But yeah, recommend all our listeners go check it out. Alan will be on the show in a couple of weeks to talk about it and a bunch of other stuff. So
that's right. And we are hoping, no promises, but we're hoping that we'll have a launch event in Melbourne as well. So we will keep you posted on that.
Absolutely. So, Emma, we usually have a little working title for the show. And this week it's These Fucking Guys. So just to give listeners an insight into vibes, we're also recording on Friday afternoon. So who knows what's going to happen. So, Emma, it is a cliche, but it's also true. It is really hard to keep up with all of the kind of threads that are going on in the Trump administration and, what it's doing around the world. But I know one story really stuck out to you this week. Tell us about the USS Lincoln.
Yes. So this is the inspiration, I guess, for this week's working title. And it's a story that's been bubbling for a few months, but it's kind of come back to the fore in the last week or so. So the USS Lincoln, the USS Abraham Lincoln, is an aircraft carrier with roughly 5,000 sailors and Marines aboard.
Big ship, right?
Big boat, really big boat.
Thank you.
That really big boat has now been at sea for 9 months. It has gone 250 days without making land, which is a record for this kind of boat. So these poor people on this ship have made land twice in that entire period where they got a day in Guam or whatever. So reports about the conditions on the ship and some pretty severe mental health crises amongst the people aboard have been circling for a while now. There was a period where pictures of their food were circling social media, and it was disgusting things like a cup of rice and a really sad-looking tortilla.
If you're Pete Hegseth and you're after maximum lethality or whatever nonsense he goes on about, white carbs only, probably not fitting the brief.
No, certainly not only steak and sauerkraut, which is what the men in the White House eat.
Yeah.
It's another story. So this has come back to prominence, though. Their stories have been circulating for a while, but it came back to prominence because the families of the Marines had a town hall in San Diego. And the stories that came out of that were really horrifying. So this is military wives basically talking about how their husbands are writing back to them at home and talking about how they were having suicidal ideation. There had been several attempts at suicide, and that these sailors are dealing with appalling conditions. So one congressman has alleged that it's things like moldy showers, broken toilets, laundry systems not working, no hot water, no deodorant, no toothpaste, no soap, and really small meals of white carbs only, right? So these people are being put through horrific conditions. There are also stories about care packages from home not appearing, taking months to arrive, so they're disconnected from their families, they're having mental health crises, and they've got no hope. Like, it's embarrassing and appalling.
Yeah, and I mean that, you know, for anyone who's lived in a shit Northcote share house, like, will sound familiar, but these people have extremely important jobs to do. I had to go to uni for 2 hours a day. That wasn't really important that I lived in Hovel. But this is not conducive to, you know, pursuing United States strategic interests. It's not conducive to looking after the welfare of the people who are in charge of, whatever you think about the war in Iran. And I think this pod's been pretty clear about what we think.
Yes.
But putting the people in charge of prosecuting that war in like dreadful conditions is not going to help your cause, I wouldn't have thought.
Well, I mean, I'm not the Secretary of Defense, but I would agree with you, you know, that maybe like getting the basics of this kind of stuff right is important. But, you know, these are the kind of people that we are dealing with, right? Like I saw one of our favorite commentators, Jamel Bowie, who's a New York Times columnist and has this great, does kind of short takes on Instagram, basically said, like, if you're Pete Hegseth and you think logistics are woke and gay, this is where you end up.
Yeah.
Right? And it is that straightforward.
Completely misrepresented. Listen, we make sure that every ship, every crew, every captain has everything we can provide them at every single moment. Some deployments are longer than others, and I have more respect and gratitude for those sailors than anybody.
So Pete Hegseth responded to these reports on Friday morning Australian time. What did he have to say?
I mean, he doesn't really care, does he? Like, he has previously dismissed these reports, very predictably as fake news. He said it was a total misrepresentation of what was happening abroad. But then he did also describe the conditions as austere, which, you know, is somewhat, I guess, of an acknowledgement. And it's also true that another carrier, the USS George Washington, is being sent to replace the Lincoln. So presumably that deployment, that record-long deployment, will end eventually. But I think more broadly, you know, it's clear that, like, Hegseth doesn't care in the sense that, you know, he has this worldview that he's made very clear about war fighters and like elite capability. He's got that thing about testosterone testing for service people over 30.
Yeah,
right?
I wonder what the T levels of people who've been eating just plain white rice and tortillas are going to be for 6 months.
Yeah, I wonder. But you can see that in that worldview, soldiers just have to put up with shit conditions. And if they can't put up with them, then they're weak and should be weeded out anyway. Yeah. Like that, I mean, that at least is my understanding of the worldview that he has presented to them. And that is entirely in line with that eugenicist worldview of the administration more broadly. And I think, like, you know, the part of the reason this story stood out to me, amongst all, you know, the myriad stories of similar incompetence and outrage and disgustingness, is that it just reveals how much Australian foreign and security policy is taking the piss. Like, our entire foreign and security policy is based on the assumption that these fucking guys who are treating their own service people like this are going to keep us safe.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole assumption. And, you know, the connection never gets made in Australia around those assumptions, around the AUKUS submarine deal, around around the entire way we orient ourselves in the world. The connection between those assumptions and stories like this is never made. It's always regarded as entirely separate. And, like, that's a joke. These fucking guys are supposed to look after us. They can't even look after themselves.
Yeah. Emma, you talked about a eugenicist worldview. What do you mean by that?
So what I mean by that is that there's an ideological through line in the Trump administration that sees the world through a eugenicist lens. Like, it has this idea about white genetic superiority, and particularly American genetic superiority, that Trump has made really clear. So Trump talks about genes and his perfect genes fairly regularly.
Winning is tough. I always said winning is somewhat maybe innate. Maybe it's just something you have. You know, you have the winning gene. A lot of it's about the genes, isn't it? Don't you believe? No, my son's got the greatest genes in history. I'm a big believer in genes, by the way, I will tell you.
And he also talks about other groups of people, like we've talked on the show before about the way Trump talks about Somali Americans, for example, as being inherently bad or inherently evil, or, you know, have whatever particular way that he's going to describe a whole group of people. The idea being that they are irredeemable, like that this particular trait that Trump is focused on, whatever it is like baked into their genes.
They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. They poison mental institutions and prisons all over the world, not just in South America, not just the 3 or 4 countries that we think about.
I was wondering whether you could comment on remarks like former President Trump made this morning, linking migration, crime, and genetics, and more specifically this sentence, quote, "We've got a lot of bad genes in our country right now," unquote.
Well, that type of language is hateful, it's disgusting, it's inappropriate, and has no place in our country.
And so they won't always say this explicitly, but it's always there. And even this week, it's come up again. And this is what I mean about the through line, because it appears everywhere. Trump did it again this week when he issued an executive order on vaccines, right? And that might not, I guess, be so obvious immediately, because this seems like it's something that's just about kind of anti-vaxxer, like crunchy mum, make America healthy again stuff, you know, like he's just kind of appeasing the California mums who supported Robert F. Kennedy Jr. But it goes deeper than that, because RFK Jr.'s anti-vax stuff is also born out of a kind of eugenics, right? This is a worldview that basically decides that healthy people are going to survive diseases like measles anyway. And if you die from measles or COVID, it's because you were already sick and you were already weak, or some, you know, combination of the two. And there is no other way to describe that worldview than eugenicist. Like that is what it is. And Trump is not necessarily conscious of that. Like he might just be thinking with that stuff he's playing politics. But when you put it alongside the way he talks about genes and perfect genes, that's the clear through line. And with Hegseth, it's like less explicit. Like he doesn't necessarily use the language about genes or genetics, but he is very clear about like the type of person he thinks should be running the Department of Defense, or, you know, the kind of person who should be running the military, and the kind of person he thinks should be running things is him. You know, like it's a straight white man. He has this very clear vision of the kind of jacked, hypermasculine white warfighter that he is implementing in the Department of Defense, right? He's effectively purged senior military leadership of anybody who doesn't fit that category. Black leaders in the military have been sacked or not promoted. The same goes for women. So while the framing might be slightly different and, you know, is arguably perhaps more white supremacist than it is eugenicist, the difference is kind of barely one of degrees, right? It's variations on a theme. And that ideological through line, I think, is really clear.
Yeah. And I mean, I think about too, you wrote a really good piece in The Conversation last year sometime about like the kind of language and imagery that the Department of Homeland Security was using in its recruitment tools, for example, the sorts of people it's trying to attract, the sorts of worldviews it's trying to attract for that like literal enforcement role. And I mean, we've seen the horrific way that that's unfolded since then, you know.
Yep.
We've talked about it before, but I'll leave a link in the show notes for that. Just sticking with Pete Hegseth for a second, he was in Panama when he responded to those allegations about the USS Lincoln. What was the big fella doing in Panama? Assuming he wasn't having a holiday.
No, he was cosplaying warfighter again.
Oh, great.
I think this is what you see behind me is what the warrior ethos looks like. It's what reestablishing it looks like. It doesn't happen in the halls of the Pentagon. It doesn't happen in the halls of Congress. It happens in training centers like this, with Americans like this who do really difficult things in really tough places, not for the timid or the entitled. And I can tell you, these young Americans are neither timid nor entitled, and they're willing to do things on behalf of the American people that no other class of Americans is able to or willing to. That's why they're the real 1%.
So he was in Panama for what I think were effectively kind of war games called that they described as Panamax, basically doing like what they describe as narco-terrorist stuff that Hegseth literally described as in the jungles. Yeah.
Jeez.
It's so gross on so many levels.
Yeah.
But he was there really talking up the fact that Colombia, which has a newly elected right-wing government, has just joined what they call the Shield of the Americas. Oh my God.
These
It's
guys,
so lame.
these fucking guys, and naming things.
Oh, well, so it's not even just the name, like it's the logo as well. I hadn't clocked
really?
this at the time. So this was announced in I think March this year, maybe whatever this time. But the logo is like a literal shield, and then the continents of North and South America, and it's got like Shield of the Americas, like some Marvel comic bullshit. Like it's so embarrassing.
I assume it was designed by Grok.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Of course it was. Not quite as embarrassing as the Space Force logo, but
Oh, yeah, that was good.
Still pretty good. Anyway, sorry. Hegseth is talking up the Shield of the Americas, which they also call the Americas Counter-Cartel Coalition.
Okay.
And he was there to do these war games, to do like cosplaying, war fighting in the jungle, swimming across the rivers and shit, and announce the new motto of the Shield of the Americas, which is, "We do bad things to bad people."
Okay. Cool.
Angus has got quite a good face on, just for those who aren't watching. And like, so I'm quoting Hegseth now. He said, "Not catch and release."
From all the way down here in the cocaine trafficking to fentanyl in the plazas of Mexico. This is a networked fight that we're empowering Southcom and Northcom together in the Western Hemisphere to execute ruthlessly. Not catch and release, not let's put them through a court process where we know they'll be released. We're going to close with and destroy these networks with every capability of the American government.
We're going to do bad things to them instead.
Yeah. And as we talked about last week, actually, with Chris Sidoti, you know, when you couple that with the attacks on the International Criminal Court, and we've talked before about the erosion of the domestic rule of law in the United States, as a non-expert, it seems to me like a real, like, all-out assault on the rule of law. And I mean, I think about that point that you make all the time, that you can't separate domestic and foreign policy. This is seems like a very clear example where, you know, you look at the initial unequivocal backing of the ICE agents who killed Renee Good, for example, you know, like you see it in the domestic United States, and then you look at, you know, the way that they're blowing up quote unquote drug boats, you know, not providing evidence for that because evidence is woke or whatever. Yeah, it's really, really deep, like deeply concerning. Like, I'm joking about it, but it's cooked. Like,
yeah, no, it's completely cooked. And as you say, it's deliberate and out in the open, and they're doing at home, you know, what they're doing abroad. So, I mean, Hegseth even said in the same press conference that the International Criminal Court might try and investigate what they're doing in Latin America. And partly for that reason, he said the Trump administration is engaged in a, quote, all of government effort to disable the ICC.
yeah.
You know, so it's clear, you know, they're ignoring the rule of law at home, they're ignoring it abroad, all in the interests of implementing that eugenicist agenda.
Yeah.
It's cooked.
So I guess on that topic, the US government has also released a report into deaths of civilians in its military operations. Is that right? In its military operations. And it's just 2025. So we're talking about Somalia, Yemen, parts of Latin America. What has the government, I guess, found about itself?
Yeah. So this report is part of, it's actually a legal requirement for the Pentagon to report to Congress on civilian casualties and incidents and efforts to mitigate against, I guess, civilian casualties. So as far as I understand it, and I don't think we have the actual report, we just have reporting on the report and kind of leaks from officials about
Sure.
that report. Or I can chuck a link to a great piece in the Intercept about this into the show notes. So as I understand it, basically the Pentagon has found that there were no civilian casualties in its operations in Latin America, that they were all narco-terrorists.
Every single one.
Yeah, apparently, which is outrageous. Like, the substance of this Intercept report was anonymous officials, basically saying this is a total joke. And the numbers of deaths that we're saying out of these operations is now estimated to be more than 200 people.
And this is for context. I talked about it with Alan Beam, I think, maybe the last full episode of last year. This covers stuff like the double tap strike.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so attacks on boats in the Caribbean and the Pacific. But it also, as you said, covers early operations in Iran. So before the actual war started, I guess, the US was striking Iran, Somalia, and Yemen as well. And this report found that American attacks killed 150 plus civilians in Yemen. But officials quoted in this story said that was probably a lowball estimate. And the other very revealing thing about it was that there's a huge backlog. So as you said, it doesn't cover the Iran war, although the Pentagon is insisting that there's only one incident in the entirety of the Iran war, which is that strike on the school early on, which obviously just defies belief.
Yes.
And it also highlighted, I think, probably the more concerning thing is that there's only one person doing this work. So the branch of the Pentagon that does these kinds of investigations into civilian casualties has a sum total of one person doing the work.
Yeah.
They got rid of everybody else.
And a lot of wars.
Yeah, a lot of bombs.
Sorry, wars within in inverted commas, because none of them are actually declared wars.
No.
They're special operations or whatever.
Yeah. So again, it's they don't care.
No. And just to round out the misery for this episode, because it's been pretty heavy.
Yeah, God, heavy, hey.
The administration has also insisted that no one has died as a result of USAID cuts. There was that excruciating press conference in the Oval Office, I think, where Elon was like, "Oh yeah, we cut the Ebola program for a bit, and then we realized that we made a mistake, so we fixed it. That's fine."
He did it again he did that also excruciating interview with The Economist when he insisted that no one died and was like, name a single person who's died. You can't.
Okay, yeah. There's been new reporting on the impact of those catastrophic budget cuts to USAID. What do we know about it?
Yeah, the AP actually did a really horrifying story about this. I think in part motivated by Musk's comments about, not a single child has died.
Yeah.
And this AP report outlines specific instances of particularly women and children who are suffering as a direct result of the withdrawal or the reduction in services around maternal and child health. So there are some specific stories there, which points to the fact, it feels kind of debasing to respond to Musk's statements specifically like that. But, we can name people. We can name a lot of people who've suffered or died as a direct result of the dissolving of USAID. But the thing that really stuck out to me in this story was that all the estimates suggest, we don't have the full statistics for the year yet, but all of the estimates suggest that global child mortality, so that means the deaths of children under 5, is expected to increase in 2025. That means it will increase for the first time this century, so the first time in decades. And that is down to Elon Musk's dissolving of USAID and the rolling effects of that. So the reduction in services and the reduction in funding by some other countries as well in response. So, 60% of women's organizations have had to reduce their services, and that has consequences. And again, to circle back, this is so bleak, but again, to circle back to our conversation about the ideological through line, again, this is about eugenics. There was this really extraordinary essay in New Republic, again, that I can link to a couple of weeks ago that got into Elon Musk's comments about how no one died. And it basically argued that what he means is no one worth caring about died. The people who died were already weak or sick or genetically inferior, and so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's revolting. And I would like to try and rescue this to end on something more positive, but I'm not, I don't know if I can. This is what we're dealing with. And again, this is the country with which we are entrusting our own security. And this is the administration that our own government is failing miserably to stand up to.
Yeah. When you lay all of those things out, as you just have, in a way that, I feel like doesn't happen that often, particularly in Australia, it is really stark. There's no sugarcoating it. It's just bleak. And I guess we'll see what happens in the midterm, in this election cycle, and that has historically been one of the tremendous strengths of the United States, is that it is able to, renew itself to some extent, and maybe that will be what happens. But I think, as we've talked about on the show before, you've got to be at least alive to the possibility that that won't happen, or at least not in the same way as it has in the past. That some of the changes to, the way that the United States democratic system, the impact of those are making the system less accountable to, or less representative of the general public and their preferences. It's making, just overall the system less democratic. There's less scrutiny through the media. There's no interest from the administration in being accountable. We talked about that report just then about the assessment of civilian deaths in overseas wars or in overseas conflicts or whatever they want to call it. It is really bleak. I did just want to turn our attention to the Democrats for just a second before we wrap up. There's been quite a lot of coverage this week about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and whether or not she may put her hat in the ring for the Democratic presidential nomination. What is the latest there?
Well, I mean, the consensus seems to be strengthening, if that's the right word, that she is running. She's going to do it. She will run for president in 2028. And that is for a number of reasons. But I guess most recently is driven by her very public and very personal announcement that she is going to freeze her eggs and is documenting that journey on social media. And I guess that personal revelation suggests to people that she's, letting more of herself out so that the public will know her and relate to her more.
Sure.
There was, alongside that, there was also the kind of soft launch of her breakup with a long-term partner that actually happened several years ago but hadn't been confirmed. So this is kind of contributing to the vibe that she is going to run. And I actually wrote about it in my column on The Point this week that it used to be a lot easier to tell who was going to run because you just had to look at who'd published a book in the lead up, the audacity of hopes in the bookcase behind me.
Definitely the worst of his first two.
Yeah. Dreams from My Father was way better.
It's delightful.
But, that's what JFK, that's how JFK had kind of launched his bid for the presidency. So that's been a long time coming. But AOC, I think, recognised much earlier than anybody else that the old game is done. And she's very good at playing the new one. She's been doing the rounds of the media. There's a lot of focus on some comments she made in an interview about woke one. and how kind of she has this quote about like woke one was crazy, because it's being framed as all these like, you know, young left democratic socialists kind of walking back from their extreme positions that they adopted in 2020 during Black Lives Matter, and a recognition that this was unreasonable. I don't think that's necessarily the case. You know, there are a lot of people with a lot of their own interests working on shaping the narrative around who has the intellectual, ideological leadership of the Democratic Party. So anytime AOC says anything, everyone in the kind of Democratic punditry establishment is trying to spin it for their own ends. So, you know, some of the more like left-wing pundits are talking about how she's selling herself out. You know, she's readying herself for a centrist run for the presidency. On the flip side of that is she's like too radical, she's dangerous, like she's just going to allow Republicans to call us all communists and we're going to lose, you know, forever and ever. So all of this is kind of coalescing around AOC, the individual, and like it's worth saying that the way she handles that is quite extraordinary. Like she is a really amazing communicator, but still hasn't confirmed, of course, whether or not she's going to run, and probably won't for a while. I think we won't really know who's going to run until after the midterms, until after we see what kind of results Democrats get, and particularly what kind of results the more democratic socialist candidates get, because that will indicate to Democrats, you know, who can win in 2028.
Well, Emma, we've gone way over time.
We really have.
Thanks for the chat. I don't know that I feel better after this, but, you know, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much, Emma.
As we know, that is not my vibe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Madam Doom strikes again.
Yeah, that's me. Thanks, Angus.
And thanks very much for listening again. We'll be back with another episode next week. Just a reminder about Alan Beam's little book, New Game, New Rules, A Foreign Policy for Dystopian Times, available for $19.95 from Australia Institute Press. We'll leave a link in the show notes to that. And for anyone in Melbourne, or, you know, if you want to come to Melbourne for it, that's great too. If you want to hear more from Emma, you can come and hear her speak with Australia Institute co-CEO Richard Dennis about his new Vantage Point essay. It's called More For Me, How the Gas Industry Tricked Australia. They'll be at Cinema Nova in Carlton on Tuesday, the 25th of August. We'll leave links in the show notes for everything that we've just talked about. This episode was recorded on Friday, the 14th of August. And After America is supported by the Andrew Farron Foundation. I'm Angus Blackman. Thanks for listening.